My travels have brought me to Point Pleasant, South Carolina, home of an American World War II-era aircraft carrier, USS Yorktown, also known as CV-10. The ship has been here in Charleston since 1973, open to the public as a museum ship. Tonight, we'll be exploring this huge vessel by going on a ghost tour conducted by Bulldog Tours. We enter by way of a brow, which takes us directly through the side of the ship onto third deck. We move to the vessel's centerline and past the after crew mess, which, despite being made of plastic, doesn't look too bad.
The Yorktown was launched in 1943 from Newport News, Virginia. Now they were having this big christening ceremony. You take a bottle of champagne and you smash it against the side of the ship, and at the bow especially, and that's when the ship is officially named. But once you christen the ship, that name is written in steel. Eleanor Roosevelt, the first lady at the time, was slated to christen the ship, and she didn't want to do it. Eleanor Roosevelt had christened the first Yorktown aircraft carrier. This is the second carrier to bear that name. First one was the USS Yorktown CV-5, and that one was struck by an enemy torpedo at the Battle of Midway and sunk. So there she is at this christening ceremony when 7 minutes ahead of time, and for no reason we can think of today, this ship launches herself. So the Yorktown is sliding stern first into the water, which means Eleanor Roosevelt is running out of bow to christen this ship pretty quick. It's just slipping away. So she jumps up, runs over this bottle of champagne. It's hanging off a rope attached to a pole. She just hurls this bottle of champagne at the side of the ship, a Hail Mary. It bounces off. So she has to wrangle this thing around, and this time with all her might and seconds to spare, she takes this bottle of champagne, swings it tetherball style into the side of the ship. It smashes against the hull once and for all, christening the USS Yorktown CV-10, herself, Admiral Buckmaster, his wife, and a bunch of press over on the dais that night. Ever since then, the paranormal activity on the ship has just stacked up. The average age of a sailor on the ship is 19 years old. You can enlist at 17, and back then if you were a big 15, 16-year-old, it was pretty easy to lie your way in. It's forged signatures on paperwork. Nobody had a picture ID. Most of the kids on the ship had never seen the ocean a day before in their lives. They're coming here from rural farming communities in the Midwest. So everything's an unknown when these kids board the ship, which means that you're instantly surrounded by as many brothers as you could possibly want, all united in their fear of the unknown, their anxiousness to get into the fight, their excitement for the adventure. Is they love the Yorktown like she was their mother. And when you think about it, the ship fed them, it clothed them, it rocked them to sleep at night. It gave them chocolate chip cookies when they were good boys, right? Just everything would want them up. And it's our belief that when some of these men died, and not just here on the ship, but later in life, having survived their military careers, the ones that found the most fellowship, the most purpose, the most joy in life on the ship were the ones that she brought back. Because for these men, the Yorktown was heaven. Everything heaven should be. It's where they always wanted to be. That's one of the reasons why the Yorktown is haunted. It's a mother embracing her sons through eternity and sharing with us their memories. It's footsteps echoing down empty passageways. It's hatches that open and close in disparate parts of the ship. And we'll hear some of that tonight. Japan had a radio station broadcast this very powerful signal that this ship could pick up, and the men would listen to it because it played all the most popular music of the day. But every day there was a segment with this sweet voiced young lady named Tokyo Rose, and her job was to demoralize the fighting sailors, make them sad, make them want to come home, by saying crazy stuff like, the Japanese Navy has just captured New York City. Your mothers and daughters and sisters and wives are all working for us. Well, that got a response. Two of the clearest words I've ever heard on a spirit box. These two words were crystal clear, and derogatory words about this woman's heritage and parentage, and we'll just leave it at that.
We're now heading into sickbay. Looks like the chemist or lab space. He doesn't look too happy. Looks like an OR.
The first person to die on the Yorktown died in this rack right here. That person's name was Ken Rafer. Ken Rafer was a pharmacist aide. Here's a guy who doesn't have a lot of medical training, but he could type real well. So he could print labels, he could count bills, he could file. He died from body lice. Now, I didn't think body lice could kill you, but you can scratch yourself to death. And that's what happened. He died of a horrible infection. So if you start feeling itchy in this part of the ship, those are ghost crabs. That's the best joke I have, too. Any better than that. It's a true story, though. 800 men had to sleep on the flight deck while they got this thing under control. It was awful. So it just depends on their experience and where they've been. So, but there were a lot of them. But yeah, I never used to talk about this model. I lost somebody back in that room with all the airplane models in it. We turned a corner, and this person's gone for a couple of minutes. You know, we backtrack a little bit, but now I just rally here out of habit, and people start asking questions. So this is the Yamato. It's the largest battleship ever constructed. And she's on board today because pilots from the Yorktown's 9th Air Group, in a coordinated attack with other pilots from other ships, were able to sink her. In the end, the ship took 35 torpedoes and 19 bombs before she sank. That's a lot. The model took 2,700 hours to build. So tell me the guy built it's either single when he started or single when he finished. Right?
We're now in an area occupied by the Marines.
Marines didn't sail the Yorktown, they protected her. So Marines are going to be pilots, they're going to be gunners, they're going to be in charge of the armory here in the brig, which is like the jail of the ship. In 1945, a 500-pound bomb was dropped on the Yorktown. Now that bomb would hit gun turret number 7, which is 2 decks above us, but like right about here. And it would bounce off of that, detonate 30 feet off the side of the ship. It instantly killed 2 men and mortally wounded a third. A fellow named Powell Barnett was the survivor. They put tourniquets around his legs and they were trying to carry him down off of this gun turret. But Powell Barnett was physically stopping him. He's holding on to the railings the whole time. He's yelling at him, "Leave me alone. Go away. I'm a lost cause. Save the Yorktown." So they leave him, and by the time they come back to get him, he's still alive. And Powell Barnett had to hold his own bottle of blood plasma high over his head. He would spend the rest of that night reassuring each and every wounded sailor that came in, "It's going to be okay, buddy. These guys really know what they're doing." He'd regale the doctors and corpsmen with stories of friends, family, and home. At midnight, Powell Barnett would succumb to his injuries, and the next morning was one of 5 men buried at sea off the flight deck of the Yorktown. But the number is significant because it's exactly as many men died on the first Yorktown aircraft carrier to the man. This little area has a room in it, room 243, that's used by staff for overnight stays. But the guy who spent the most time in that room is a fellow named Brian Parsons. So Brian Parsons is he's a camper, Boy Scout, and comes out here and spends the night for the first time, falls in love with her. He got here kind of late one Friday. It wasn't until about 11:30 that it finished up with his task, so he decides he's going to stay here for the night. So he's lying there. He's still awake. He feels like it's between 12:15, 12:30 when he hears this really loud noise. Brian's on his feet. It's a step and a half to the door. He looks out in the passageway. There's a chain across this hatch, a chain across that hatch. They're not swinging right. Didn't hear footsteps. And that night it's Brian and the security guard, no overnight cameras. Brian has told us over the years he's gotten used to a lot of the paranormal phenomena that happens out here. Like us, he believes that the spirits who haunt this ship are spirits of heroes. Kids who dedicated their lives to this country and the ship. And they're not going to hurt us. That said, there's a part of the ship that Brian refuses to go into, and that's where we're going next. So you're going to line up behind me, and you can go with me too. You're going to line up behind me. You want to go in there? Okay, so you're going to line up behind me.
That was completely bizarre. Several minutes after we left that dark, creepy area and moved away from the space, my camera started working again, and it worked fine for the rest of the tour. Strange, very strange. We moved up onto the hangar deck, where there's an excellent collection of World War II era aircraft to explore.
A little more privacy, the bathroom is closer. And before the Yorktown left Newport News, Virginia, some pilots had gone into town to get something to eat. They run into this little stray dog. And they look all over for the owners of the dog, can't find him. They decide in the end they're gonna smuggle this dog on board the Yorktown. They call the dog Scrapper Scrapnel, or Scrappy for short. They just have to keep the dog a secret from the captain until the ship is well on its way to the Panama Canal. At that point, it's begging forgiveness, not asking permission. The captain's on the bridge. He hears a dog barking down below, and there's this 14-pound ball of fur running around with what looked like a custom-made life vest on. And they end up telling the captain that they named the dog after him. So that melted the captain's icy heart. Now, campers will say in the early morning hours, they'll hear barking coming from their area here. They'll see a Wizard of Oz looking dog roaming the passageways of the Yorktown. The Scrappy spirit exists on the Yorktown today. It's here for the same reason the spirits of the sailors here. Because for a dog off the streets, this was all the boys could play with, all the scraps they could eat forever.
Because the Yorktown was a recovery ship for the Apollo 8 mission, the museum has a replica Apollo capsule. Some more vintage aircraft. This one being an AD-4N Sky Raider and a Grumman F-4F Wildcat. Along the wall is a quad-mount 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft gun. This aircraft is the successor to the Wildcat, the Grumman F-6F Hellcat, one of the best fighter aircraft produced during the war. We've moved into one of the pilot ready rooms.
I think we see this room every day, for the most part. All right, now we're going to go this way into the red room.
Now over to CIC.
All that information comes in on the left-hand side of the room via radar and sonar, not just from the Yorktown, but other planes and ships that are so equipped. And then that information is translated onto the glass panels here by a guy on the other side, so that these guys can read it. And if you're in this room, chances are you're going to go up to the flight deck. Now, the flight deck is very dark. They've turned off all the lights on the outside of the ship. This red lighting allows you to see what you're doing in here and not have to adjust to the complete darkness of it.
We've moved outside onto the flight deck. And while it's hard to see in the dark, this is a Sikorsky SH-3 Sea King helicopter, which looks like this in the light of day.
We had a young lady whose dad used to fly these, and she wants to get a picture of the inside before. So she just holds her phone up, takes this blind photo inside the helicopter. When she gets home and sees what she has, she immediately emails us. Let's see if you can see what.
It does look like a ghost image of an airman. That is going to wrap up this video. That was just a sample of the tour, which was a bunch of fun. The carrier all by itself is an amazing ship to crawl through and explore. Tonight I barely scratched the surface of what is here to see and experience. Definitely a worthwhile stop and well worth the cost. Remember, life is a journey. Enjoy the ride, and thanks for watching.